Okay, good morning. This is the time and place for the Planning Hearing Officer meeting of October 22nd, 2014. My name is Vilya Zamataitis, and I will be conducting the hearing as the hearing officer. We have one case on today's agenda, and all of the relevant exhibits are posted on the panels directly behind me. The case concerns a variance for the properties located at 647 Alta Vista Drive, and that includes the properties at 701 and I believe 705 Prospect Drive. That's a correction from the agenda. If evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria just described for a standards variance, the planning hearing officer can either approve or impose conditions of approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will have to be denied. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and having provided their name and mailing address. Please note that the date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30, Chapter 3062 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from the Building and Safety Section Permit Services Center located on the same floor of this building. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of the speaker forms which have been provided by the front door and submit it to our planning assistant. I would like to also inform everyone that the official proceedings of the planning hearing officer's hearing are being recorded as part of the public record. Okay, I will read a description of the applicant's request. I will then also read the reports received from other city departments and other letters of communication from interested parties. The case planner, Mr. Roger Kiesel, will make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak again, clearly stating both name and address within a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to the testimony given by the preceding speakers. The hearing will be closed and the case taken under submission. Okay, and to go to today's agenda, again, there's only one case on today's agenda, which is variance case number PVAR 1414827 for a variance located at 647 Alta Vista Drive. The application is for a variance to allow construction of a 6-foot wrought iron fence within the minimum 15-foot street front setback for these subject properties located in the R1R restricted residential zone. So, Mr. Kiesel?
Within the street front setback of 3 adjoining vacant lots zoned R1R on Alta Vista and Prospect Drives. The R1R zone requires a minimum 15-foot street front setback. The applicant is requesting to construct the fence a minimum of 4 feet from the street front property line. Variances may be granted if 4 findings can be made in the affirmative, and staff believes that in this case, this can be done. Characteristics of the lots, of the 3 lots, are all similar. Each slopes steeply toward the west of the residence toward the west to the residences below on Cypress Street. All the lots are undeveloped. The neighborhood, while containing single-family houses, does include some vacant parcels. The topography of the surrounding area is steep. Both Both Prospect and Alta Vista Drives are narrow, and while they are not dead-end streets, they really only serve residents on those streets. There's no other reason for anybody else to be on them. The subject lots, therefore, are somewhat isolated and have drawn some unwanted behavior and become attractive nuisances. The strict application of the provisions of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance. Installing fencing at a location to comply with setback requirements would result in practical difficulties because of this extreme slope of the three lots. The average current slope of the lots ranges from 62 to 67%. The goal of installing the fence in this case is to prevent access to the undeveloped lots, and that could not be met because a fence constructed either perpendicular to the slope or at a standard straight up and down could easily be scaled and would not prevent access to the portion of the lot between the proposed fence and the street. There are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved. The subject lots are currently vacant and no development is proposed on them aside from the proposed fence. As previously described, the lots are somewhat isolated and have become attractive nuisances, which is the exceptional circumstance that really doesn't apply to many other lots in the R1R zone in the city. Granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property improvements in such zone or neighborhood. The applicant has had trespassing and other associated behaviors occurring on these lots, which have the potential to cause hazardous conditions affecting the site and the surrounding neighborhood. This has been documented in an email from our police department. Constructing the wrought iron fence will significantly limit the ability of trespassing on the site as well as the other activities that have occurred. As such, approving the requested variance will advance the public welfare and will not be injurious to the property or improvements in the neighborhood. Finally, the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objective of the ordinance. The objective of prohibiting most development within the street front setback, and in the present case, a wrought iron fence, is to maintain the open streetscape of the residential neighborhood. In the current situation, the openness of the streetscape will be maintained with construction, even with construction of the fence. The topography of the lots slopes steeply toward the west. The open streetscape, important in residential neighborhoods, instead of being composed of well-maintained landscape yards, in this case, is more the panoramic view of the Griffith Park Mountains, treetops, portions of forest lawn, and the skyline. Partially because the porous nature of wrought iron fencing, these items will not be blocked with the fence. More importantly, however, the features important in maintaining the streetscape openness are the distance and the topography of the area. Additionally, the expectation of open front yards may be somewhat different or less in Adams Hill than in most R1R zones in the neighborhood, given the small lot sizes, the steep topography, and the time period and pattern of the development that occurred in the area. Many of the homes were developed in the 20s and 30s, and because of the small lot size, front yards are typically very small or almost non-existent. However, any residential development proposed on these subject lots will significantly alter the streetscape due to related grading and probable location of single-family houses. So staff is recommending a condition be added to approval of the project or of the variance, stating that the variance would no longer be valid on a particular lot should development be proposed and constructed on the lot. So if one of those three lots at some point a house is proposed and approved and being constructed, the variance to allow a fence in the front yard staff is recommending no longer be valid. Finally, before concluding, I'd like to clarify a couple items. On the site plan, there is an easement area shown on the plans, and that's actually, there was some sort of adjustment to the property lines at some point between the two adjacent properties. So that's not an easement. It's really the lot on Alta Vista Drive giving up a portion of their original lot to the lot on Prospect. It's the triangular. Yes. Yeah.
Right there.
It was some sort of property line adjustment. Also, as we alluded to earlier, in processing this project, we gave the 3 vacant lots tentative addresses, one of which was 711 Prospect Drive. We'd like to change that tentative address to 705 Prospect because the lot to the north is actually got that address currently. The lot to the north of the project is already 711 Prospect. So we'd like to give the most northern vacant lot of the subject site the address 705. And that concludes what I have to say.
Thank you. Now, in going over the comments from the other various departments, there's a comment from Glendale Water and Power, the electrical engineering section, which states that no fencing is permitted adjacent to or attached to any utility poles, but because the fence is being proposed from either 4 to 6 feet away from the property line, I believe that's outside of this 5-foot clearance required for the utility poles. Is that correct?
I believe there are 1 or 2 utility poles, and
there's a street sign and a telephone.
Yeah, the proposed fence is outside of. Access can be gained to the telephone pole and is not attached. And the fence is not attached to the utility pole.
Now, is there an existing easement? Because the Glendale Water and Power refers to an existing easement.
Right, and I think they referred to the existing easement because there was an easement shown on the plans that we forwarded to them. Okay. But it is in fact lot line adjustment.
Lot line adjustment. Okay, and yes. Comments were submitted from the police department with regards to calls for service for this particular area due to alleged narcotic use, loitering, trespassing issues. So that has been documented in the police comments for this particular proposed site. So other than that, I see nothing in terms of any unusual or site-specific comments from any of the various departments. So I would like to open up the public hearing and call one of the property owners, Mr. Morgan Ward Duran. If you don't mind stating your name and your address for the record, please.
Morgan Ward Duran, 644 East Cypress Street, Glendale, California, 91205. First, I just want to say thank you for hearing this matter, and thank you to Roger for helping me through the process. He was great. I also want to state that I concur in whole with what I heard from the city in terms of the staff's recommendation. I'll briefly outline my points, supporting my findings, and then that'll be it. First, regarding the strict application of the ordinance, I agree that strict application will be detrimental. The fence will not impede the view of anybody on the street. It will only restrict access to people who have been causing problems through either drug use, trespass, fornication, and littering, and also fire hazard, because I guess cigarettes isn't a drug use, but anything to do with lighting. This area is native hillside, and we don't get a lot of water here in Glendale. And so the throwing of any sort of lit match, or even I found pretty much on a weekly basis lighters thrown on the hillside, and that can obviously result in a fire hazard. So the strict application, I think, of the ordinance would impede the ability to basically remedy these problems. The exceptional circumstances that exist are that there is this sort of attractive nuisance of you're on the top of a hillside and you do have a beautiful view. Most of Adams Hill has a beautiful view, but there aren't a lot of vacant lots right next to the street. And these are 3 vacant lots with, I guess it'd probably be about a quarter mile or half mile worth of, maybe a quarter mile of frontage. And so kids come up there and drink and smoke and have sex and do drugs. And they do it on our property, and we're trying to prevent that. And the fence will do that without impeding the view. An additional benefit to the public welfare would be that the police would have hopefully fewer calls to have to deal with these issues, and any potential fire hazard would be minimized. And then also I can sleep at night. And then finally, why granting the ordinance will be in keeping with the objectives of the granting the variance will be in keeping with the objective of the ordinance is basically it'll help preserve the hillside, prevent any sort of fires, benefit the public welfare in terms of the neighbors. I should mention that every neighbor with whom I've spoke, which is all the surrounding houses, is in full support of the fence, and all agree that a fence will help deter, if not eliminate, the issue of trespass, drugs, smoking, loitering, and fornication. That's all I have, unless you have a question or questions.
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see one other individual in the audience who has submitted a speaker card, Mr. Mark Fletcher. Address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Mark Fletcher. I live at 711 Prospect Drive, Glendale, California, 91205. My purpose of being here today is twofold. One is to have the address corrected, which has been done. Roger has agreed to send me a little note stating that my property is not part of this and that there was an error on the listing. And second, to support the building of a fence. I want to substantiate and agree and amplify what was just said. I haven't talked to all the neighbors, but I've talked to 3 of them, and the 3 that I have spoken to and myself agree that this might help the situation that goes on a daily basis. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down. There is the opportunity for Mr. Morgan Duran to rebut if you so wish. If you have no further comments, then...
I have no further comments.
Thank you. With that, I will be taking the matter under submission and rendering a decision very shortly. So this hearing is now officially closed. Thank you very much for coming.
Dressed it up with love across the 7 seas to you. Oh, will it be enough? And I will be a rainbow. Oh, now your storm is gone. And I will bring the song for you. And I will carry on. For the stars in the sky above, I will bring that beauty home because of my love. And I will be a rainbow. Now your storm is gone, and I will bring my song to you, and I'll carry on. But the voice of complaint, my hands shall not tremble, my feet shall not falter, the void shall not weary, the feet shall not alter. It's rainbow, oh, it's rainbow. Oh, can you see the eyes of lovers? A pocket full of hearts, a world that's filled with love, a love that carries all before, a passion in the flood. I lie beneath the rainbow, now your tears are gone, and I will sing my song for you, and I will carry on.